So, good morning, learners. So, welcome back to the topic in General Physics 1, and today we are going to learn about rewriting the vector in component form. So, after finishing the module or this lesson, the learner should be able to first solve the x component of the vector, second, solve the y component of the vector, and third, determine the sign of each vector component. So, let's begin. So, the methods of vector addition is the graphical method and the component method. We are done discussing the graphical method, which are the polygon method and the parallelogram method in our previous video. Now, we are going to learn about the component method. So, consider vector A and B if you are to add them algebraically. You must first break the vector in its component. The component of the vector depends on the coordinate system we use. In this case, we have the x and y component because we are using an x and y plane, which is also called as the Cartesian coordinate system. So what is the component method? Component method of addition requires that a vector must first be written into its component. So we have the vector A and the vector B as being illustrated in the figure 1. So the component of the vector depends on the coordinate system that is being used. Now, let us try to find out the component of the vector A. We can do this by drawing perpendicular lines from the end of the vector, just as shown in the figure. The vector along the x-axis is a sub x, while the vector along the y-axis is the a sub y. From your math lectures, we can solve each component using the formula given. So the formula for a sub x is a cosine theta, and the formula for a sub y will be a sine theta, whereas a is the magnitude of a direction and theta is the angle of the positive x-axis. The component of the vector can also be positive or negative depending on its position on the coordinate plane or system. The x component is positive when the vector points to the right, while it is negative when the vector points to the left. On the other hand, the y component is positive when the vector points upward, while it is negative while the vector points downward. So, we have the positive x, positive y, and negative y component. Positive x denotes a vector point to the right. Negative x denotes a vector pointing to the left. Positive y denotes the vector points upward, and the negative y denotes that a vector points downward. So the component of the vector can also be positive or negative depending on its position on the coordinate system. Now, let us try to solve the x and y component of the vector A using the given. Use your calculator to compute cosine and sine theta based on our calculation. A sub x and a sub y are both 2.83 kilometer. So, as you can see in the vector A, the origin of the magnitude is 0, right? And it points towards northeast. Now, the y component here is letter A, or the a sub y, and the x component there is a sub x. We just have to substitute all the values to our formula, then we can get the answer, which is 2.83 kilometers. Now, let us have another illustration. Let us try to solve the x and y component of the vector B using the given. Note that 20 degrees west of north is equal to 110 degrees from the positive axis. Moreover, the negative sign indicates that the x component is along the negative x-axis. So, you just have to substitute the values in the given formula. Then, you can get your answer. So, we can also solve this problem using this way. Take note that the negative sign in solving b sub x indicates that the vector is in the negative axis. So, again, we just have to substitute all the given values to our formula in order for us to solve the following quantities so that we can get the final answer. Now, let's try to determine the sign of each vector component. I want you to substitute or use the formula given in the vector A or the first vector and the second vector. Now, without calculation, try to determine the sign of the x and y component of the following vector based on their quadrants. So, we have letter D, we have letter E, and we have letter F. Now, I want you to write down your answer in our chat box in order for us to see whether you get the correct answer. Again, try to determine the sign of the x and y component of the following vectors. Now, the final answer would be D. D sub x will be negative because and d sub y will be negative because they are in the negative x and negative y quadrant. In E, we have e sub x positive and e sub y positive because they are in the positive and negative axis or the x and y axis, and they are in the positive quadrant. Now, let's take letter F. So, let f sub x is positive because the x is positive and y is negative. So, that is the solution. Remember, given a vector A with direction or with a magnitude of A at the angle theta from the positive axis, the vector components can be written as A sub x is equal to A cos theta or cosine theta. Then A sub y is equal to A sine theta. The component of the vector can either be positive or negative depending on its position on the coordinate system. So, we all learned that the component of the vector can either be positive or negative depending on the vector's position on the coordinate system. Now, that ends the presentation and thank you very much for listening.